Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we are making this gorgeous baby boy crochet cardigan. We are making it with a v-neck, which is really neat, and this beautiful border around. I made this cardigan with a 12 to 18 months old boy in mind. The buttons are very cute, very neutral for this cardigan, as are the colors. For this cardigan, I used variegated yarn by Loops and Threads. It is Delicate DK acrylic blend, and it has 70% acrylic and 30% polyamide in it. Recommended hook is 4 millimeters, but I used 4.5. This is a lightweight or number 3 yarn. And what else I needed for this project is obviously my buttons. I needed 3 of them. They are 2 centimeters or 3/4 inch wide across. I also needed a pair of scissors, crochet yarn 4.5 millimeters, measuring tape, a bunch of stitch marker, and darning needles. That's all I needed, and without further ado, let's begin. To begin, I will change my background to a darker color because you won't be able to see the white yarn on the back white surface. So we're going to start with a slip knot, and I'm going to chain 50. Next I'm going to chain 2. We will skip this stitch, and into the next one we will do our single crochet. You will chain 1, skip the next stitch, and into the next single crochet. So that's our sequence for this row. Chain 1, skip 1, and into the next one, 1 single crochet. Skip 1, single crochet. So we need 22 of these chain 1 spaces, and so far I have, so this is the very first space that we did. Then there is a single crochet. This is our second space, single crochet, third space, single crochet, and fourth place. So we need 22 of those chain 1 spaces. I got my 22 chain spaces. Now I'm gonna chain 3 and turn my work. I'm going to put additional double crochet into that very first chain 1 space. And now if you look at the way this previous row looks, you will always see a single crochet. So this is your single crochet. Right next to it is the chain 1 space. Then again, this is single crochet. Right next to it is chain 1 space. So always look for those 2 little bars, which is your single crochet. Right next to it is your chain 1 space. So our sequence for this row is 2 double crochets in every chain 1 space. Now we're going to have to also do our increases. So the very next space will have our first increase, and that's 4 double crochets into that chain 1 space. So 1, 2, and 4. Into the next chain 1 space, we will do 2 double crochets and 3 more. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is our shoulder area that we just did those stitches for, and now we're gonna do an increase again. So this is our single crochet, this is our chain 1 space. So we're gonna put 4 double crochets in that space, now we're gonna do 8 clusters for our back of the cardigan. So 1, after 8 clusters we're gonna do 4 double crochet increase into the next chain 1 space, and now we will do 4 clusters at the end of the row. After my 4 shoulder clusters I have 2 more space remaining, so in this next space I'll do my increase, and now we're going to mimic what we did at the beginning of the row, and that was chain 3, and then our 1 double crochet was in the first chain 1 space. So now we're going to do that in opposite order. So in the chain 1 space you will put 1 double crochet, and into the top of chain 3 you will put additional double crochet. So our setup row is done. We will now chain 3, and I strongly recommend start using the stitch markers because it's easier to find the chain 3 at the end of the round when you need to place 2 double crochets in it. So you will turn your work, and then at the same space with right here, right there, we're going to put additional double crochet. Now we're going to place our first cluster between the increase and the 2 double crochets below. So that's going to be our first cluster of 2 double crochets. And every time we come across increase, which is 4 double crochets right here, we're going to put 4 double crochet into the middle of that stitch. So 4 double crochets, and now we're going to continue putting a cluster into each space between the clusters below, and then we're going to put an increase in the middle of this stitch. So let's continue with our cluster, which is the first space right behind the increase, like so, and now increase in the middle of the increase from the row below. Okay, so you're always working between the 2 clusters of 2 double crochets. So again, the cluster will go here and continue that until the end of the row, and then I'll show you how to finish the row and turn your work. At the end of the row, after increase, we have 1 space remaining, so 2 double crochet cluster in that space. And now if you remember here, we did 2 double crochets or chain 3 and a double crochet into that very last stitch. So we're going to do the same here. We're going to find the chain 3, the top of chain 3, and put 2 double crochets in that stitch. So chain 3, put the stitch marker into the top of chain 3, turn your work and back into that same stitch, which is this one right here. We're going to put additional double crochet, so that creates or shapes our V opening. Now we're going to continue with clusters between every cluster as we did in previous row. So every increase from the previous row, we're going to do the same thing with, put 4 double crochets in every increase. And then, oops, and then continue with our clusters right into the next space. So we will continue this for 8 rows. I'm going to show you one more time what to do at the end of the row, and then we're going to continue with 8 rows. So this is our increase number 1. This is increase number 2. That's how I count them the easiest. So 1, 2, and then we'll need to do 6 more after that. I'm at the end of the row 3. So 1 more regular cluster here, and then now it's so much easier to find our chain 3 or top of chain 3. Into that space you will put 2 double crochets. Okay, so we would now chain 3 again, put our stitch marker there, turn our work and continue. Before I do so, I will just show you how to undo the extra stitches that we don't need anymore. I usually grab a very darning needle and just look to where your yarn is going and pull it out. Maybe daunting a little bit, but nothing we can't handle. Make sure you don't undo the very last stitch. So the one here. And always hold the extra stitches here so that you don't accidentally pull and make a knot. And I will stop here. So here you just pull the yarn and tighten it, and we're going to later weave in the end. So that also removes some of the bulkiness of the slip knot with every start that we make. I'm going to cut right here by the knot. And so that's our neckline shaping nicely. So that's what that's going to look like, except this will go and keep closing in. Once we reach the 2 points touching, we're done with our raglan increase. So we got 3 rows now, 1, 2, 3. We need 8. I got my 8 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Row 9, we're going to do a little bit differently, only where our increases are. So we're going to continue with chain 3 as usual. I'll turn my work and put the first double crochet into that very first stitch, And now continue with clusters until our first increase. I'm at my first increase, my 4 double crochets. Instead of putting 4 double crochets in the middle of the last increase, I'm going to go and put 1 cluster, 2 double crochets between the first and the second double crochet, and also between the third and the fourth. So in this space here between the first and the second, I'll put 1 cluster. And then I'm gonna go between the 2 last stitches and put my cluster here. So continue doing this with every increase. I'll show it to you one more time when I get to it. I'm at my next increase. So again, we're gonna put 1, 2 double crochet cluster in here, then skip these 2 stitches and then 1 here. So between the first and the second double crochet, put 1 cluster, and between the third and the fourth, put the other cluster, and then continue with regular clusters. So you're going to repeat this until the end of the row. So we now have 9 rows of increases. We don't count the first single crochet row. So what we need to do now is look at those increases that we used to have. So if you remember, they're running right here. Then the last increase was here, and then we put 1 stitch in the middle of the first 2 and the second 2 double crochets of the increase. So between these 2 stitches, I'll put a stitch marker. This is where we're going to connect the shoulders. Look at your next increase row. The last one is right here. We added 1 stitch here, 1 cluster here and 1 here. So in between them, put a stitch marker, and we'll do the same with the rest of the 2 increase rows. So we are now ready to connect our sides, the back to the front, to create arm opening. So chain 3. We are no longer going to do increases into the first stitch. So instead, I'm going to just yarn over and put my first cluster in the very first space. And continue doing so until you get to our stitch marker. Once you reach the stitch marker, remove it. And in that space, do 1 double crochet. Then move on to the opposite side, which is where your stitch marker is. And into that space, put a single or double crochet. And now continue with regular clusters until your next stitch marker. So this is what we have: 2 double crochets or a cluster, 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet, and then a cluster. So continue on until your next stitch marker. Do the same at the next stitch marker. So we're going to put 1 double crochet in that marked space, and then move on to the other stitch marker. I will remove it, and in that space we're going to do double crochet. And let's continue with our first cluster until the end of this row. At the end, if you remember, we put one cluster into our very first space, in this case very last space, and then we started with a chain 3, which means we're going to end at the top of chain 3 with a double crochet. Like so. Chain 3, turn your work, and now this time this is going to be like a granny stitch pattern. So when you see the space right next to the chain 3, we're going to put additional double crochet in that space and move on with clusters all the way around. I'll just show you what to do once you reach the under armpit or armpit area. So once you reach the under armpit area, I am going to put one double crochet or one cluster here. So between the last cluster and the single double crochet that we did. And I'm going to hop on to the next space between the first double crochet cluster and the one that we added, and do a cluster there. And now continue with your regular clusters until the end of the row. And I'll show you this one more time at the other armpit area. At the next sleeve opening again, we have that one double crochet that we added, and this is our last cluster. I'm going to put my last cluster for this side right in here between the two. And then look for the same space on the other side. So this is a full cluster, this is one double crochet, and I'm going to put my cluster right here. And continue on with regular clusters. Once you get to the end, you can see that here we had 2 double crochets at the end, and then here we had only 1. So I am going to add 1 double crochet in the space next to the chain 3, and 1 more double crochet at the top of chain 3. So you will always alternate 2, 1, 2, and then 1. So I'm going to chain 3, turn my work. Now we can see that there are 2 double crochets here. I'm going to skip those 2 and then put my cluster into the next available space. So then again, you can see 2 double crochets and then 1, 2 double crochets and then 1, and that will move the placement of your first cluster. So continue this, and the same when you come to the armpit. Now it's just smooth sailing. Just keep skipping the clusters and putting clusters in between the spaces. So starting from the arm opening right here, 5 inches. We'll likely need more, but I just want to play it safe. So 5 more inches, and if 2 rows of mine are 1 inch, then we need 10 rows. We already have 2, so 8 more rows. And I'll see you then. I am going to mark to where I started counting, and that's from this row here. So this is my row 1. 1 and 2. We need 8 more. I got my 8 rows. So we started from here. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So a quick measurement just to see how many more rows do we need to achieve the height. I need approximately 12 inches. So if I measure from the top of the shoulder to the bottom of my work right now, I have just slightly over 8 inches, so maybe 8.5 inches, which is about 21 centimeter. So let's do 9, and then we'll decide if we need the 10th one or if the border will be enough. So 9 more rows. So I am going to mark my last row. I finished my 9th row. So just to double check, I am going to count my rows now. So starting from here, this is row number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we did additional 9. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. So I got 17 rows, and that means I will no longer add more rows because I'm going to do a little bit of a border or ribbing. So here I'm going to cut my yarn and remove my stitch marker. So just chain 1 and leave yourself decent tail so you can weave it in. So let's weave in our ends. So there is one here at the bottom, and there is one here at the neckline, and then we can continue with our button band. To start the button band, I'm going to attach my yarn in the middle of the back and tie your yarn to it. You will chain 1, and in that same space, single crochet. So we are going to put a single crochet into the space between the clusters. So into the cluster, between the cluster, and into the cluster. So this is in the cluster, this is between the two clusters, in the actual cluster, then between, in the actual cluster. So remember we had that skip one space that we did in our very first row. So continue doing this. Once you come to the end of the neckline, now we're going to go to do the V part. And what we're going to do there is we're going to insert our hook into the very first space and then into the next space here. So each row of double crochet clusters will have 2 single crochets. So one will be here, the second one will be right here. So right here, and then that little separate space right here. So each double crochet row will have 2 single crochets. And one more here. So continue doing this until you reach the bottom. I'm almost at the end of the row. So here I'm going to put 1 single crochet and another single crochet. And now this is our last row of clusters. So in that last space between the 2 double crochets, I'm going to put a single crochet, chain 2, and I'm going to put another single crochet into that same space between the last 2 stitches of a cluster. Now we're going to start doing single crochet into each stitch around. So we had 2 double crochets per each cluster, which means we will have 2 single crochet up top of all the clusters. I'm also working over my tail, which I weaved in earlier. And now I can cut the excess yarn. And I'll continue with single crochets until you get to the next corner before you turn to the front. Once you get to the corner between the 2 double crochets, so this is the chain 3 and the double crochet, we're going to put single crochet, chain 2, turn your work sideways, and into that same space we're going to put single crochet. We're going to put single crochet or 2 single crochets into the next row, and then continue with 2 single crochets all the way down to where we started our work. I have my last few stitches remaining before I slip stitch. And one more time. And now we're going to slip stitch to the first single crochet. Okay. So let's see what we got, or what we have so far. All right, so as you can see, I marked these 2 rows, and this is where I'm going to start counting for buttonholes. So count from the bottom: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and then mark the row right above it, so row 20. And same on the other side. And then the 20th row I marked with a stitch marker. All right, so to start row 2, we're going to make it interesting and work only into the back loops of every single crochet. And what I mean is, when you look at the single crochet stitches we just made, each of them has a little V. So this is the top of single crochet and top of single crochet and top. So each of them have little V. This is the front loop and this is back loop. So we're going to be working in these back loops only. So chain 1, and start with the back loop of that same stitch. You may want to mark our first single crochet, and you're going to do back loop single crochet all the way around, going down the neck line as well as the chest area until you reach the corner, and then we'll do the corner together. So do all of this, and I'll meet you here. I'm at my last single crochet here. I'm going to do it into the back of that stitch, and now we came to our chain 2 space that we did in the previous row. In that space we're going to do single crochet, chain 2, and back into that same space, single crochet, and then continue with back loop single crochets until you get to the under corner. Repeat what we just did and then finish at the back of the neck. I finished second row of back loop single crochets, and now we need to separate or mark the spaces where we're going to create buttonholes. I'm making this for a boy, so for the boy, buttons need to be on the right side meaning the buttonholes will be on the left side. If you're making this sweater for a girl, then you will just reverse what I just said. So I found myself these neat buttons, and they are 2 centimeters or I would say 3/4 of an inch, slightly more across. And then what I've done is, this is the left side of my garment. I marked the very first stitch that belongs to the front. These other stitches are the V shape of a neckline. So you can find this stitch easily because it will be going, this is the 19th row that we marked, so it's going to be right below it, so right in line with this line here. So that's where I put my stitch marker, and I started counting from there. I will be working into 3 stitches, and then the next 2 stitches I'm going to make an opening for a buttonhole. Then I'm going to do 12 stitches, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 and 12, and then the next 2 stitches will be for my buttonhole. Then 12 stitches apart again, 11 and 12, and the next 2 stitches will be my buttonhole, and then I have 3 stitches remaining. So in total I have 36 stitches here. To continue, we will chain 1 and do our first single crochet into the back loop of that same single crochet, and now continue single crochets until you get to the marked stitches. I'm at the marked 2 stitches for my first buttonhole, so I put my single crochet right before that here so you can see it better. So these are my 2 marked stitches. I'm going to put a single crochet, the last one, before the buttonhole into the back loop. Now chain 2. You will skip these 2 stitches and do single crochet into the back loop of that next stitch. So that's our first buttonhole, and I'm going to make sure that my button goes neatly and easily through it. So let's do one more buttonhole together. So here I am, these are my 2 stitches that I marked for a buttonhole. I'm going to put 1 more single crochet into the back loop here, chain 2, skip these 2 stitches and put my next single crochet into the back loop of this single crochet. So do this for the 3rd buttonhole. When you get to the corner, you're going to put again 1 single crochet, chain 2 and 1 single crochet in this corner space, and then continue till the end. For the row 4 of our border, same thing, chain 1 and start working single crochets into the back loops of the single crochets from the previous row until you reach the buttonhole, and we'll do 1 together. I'm at my first buttonhole that we created in the previous row. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a back loop single crochet into the next stitch, and then I'm going to go 2 single crochets into the space, the chain 2 space we created, and the very first stitch I'm going to start doing my back loop single crochets until I get to my next buttonhole. So again, this is our chain 2 that we did to create a buttonhole. So the last stitch is right here. I'm going to do single crochet into that back loop, then 2 single crochets inside the loop, and then right next, this is the first stitch, in the back of that stitch I'm going to start my single crochet. So continue on, finish the third buttonhole the same way, and then continue until you get to the end of the row, and then we're going to do one more row all the way around. So I finished my 5 rows, and we can certainly see those. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. This is such a great way to finish the cardigan. It also tapers in the bottom, so as if we have the ribbing. And so what I'm going to do now is I am going to cut the yarn here, and I will deal with this later. I'm going to do an invisible join. I'll leave myself about maybe 4 inches of thread, and now we can start working on our sleeve. So to start, you can see that this is our corner right here. These are the 2 clusters that we did for each corner. I'm going to start between the first 2 clusters that I see. This here is a double crochet, and I'm skipping this space. I'm going to start into the next. Leave yourself about 6 inches of yarn. I'm going to start with double yarn, or you can tie it onto the fabric. And now do 2 more chains, and into that same space I'm going to put my second double crochet. So that's my first cluster. Continue with clusters all the way around until you get close to the end, and we're going to put our last cluster on the opposite side. So this is our corner. We are not working in here. We're going to be working into this space as our last cluster. I'm almost at the end. So looking again, these are our corner stitches right here. We are not finishing here. We're going to be finishing in this space, which is my next. Okay, I'm going to count my clusters. 6, 8, 10, 12, and 13. You should have 13 clusters. At the end of the row, we're going to slip stitch to the top of chain 3 at the beginning. So 1, 2, and 3. I am going to slip stitch into that chain 3. I will turn my work and chain 3. I'm going to add additional double crochet into the space between the first and the last cluster, and now continue working around until you get to the end of the row, and then I'll show you one more time how to turn and connect the 2 ends. Almost at the end of the row. This is my last space between the 2 clusters. We are going to slip stitch into the top of chain 3 and chain 1 for now. I'm just going to double check that I have 13 clusters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So let's do approximately 2, 4, 6 rows, and then we might need to adjust the color. Why? Because when you're working in the round for the body of the on the body of the cardigan, the length, obviously the width is way wider than the edges of the sleeve, and so our color would be predominantly probably one. And if I continue to work with the yarn as is, it would be all bluish, blue and white, and maybe a little bit of a darker blue. So I'm going to show you what to do, or what I do, because it does bother me. And if it doesn't bother you, you can just continue using the same strand, not cut, not do anything with it. So 4 more rows. So I got my 4 rows, and as you can see, we're getting into really light blue and white. There is a speck of kind of cream colored yarn, so I am going to cut my yarn here. Then I'm going to take my yarn ball and I am going to unravel it and use it later for different project, or maybe to sew something together. Now this may be a little bit tricky, but let's go with this layer here and see what happens. I'm gonna do that off camera. I don't want to grab too many. There, something like that. And then I'm gonna go with light blue, because the normal progression is sort of whitish and then light blue and then cream and then mocha color. And the way I tie it is I line up the 2 ends opposite to one another. Then I make a knot under the yarn on this end, turn it the other way, and now tie this strand under the blue, so the opposite direction. It's easier to use your hook to pull the little strand through. So now you have 2 knots, and now what you're going to do is just tighten it, and then you can now cut the yarn as close to that knot as you can, like so. So that looks pretty good. And now we're just going to continue by slip stitching into the top of chain 3, chain 1, and turn my work. 1 more double crochet here, and now continue until you reach the desired length of your sleeve. My sleeve is about 7 inches in total, and to count the rows, so counting, so this is our corner stitch, so I'm counting from there, not here, from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So I got 16 rows, and here we're gonna count the same way. So we're not counting from this row where we have the corner, the stitch. We are going to start counting from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is our eighth row, so we will need 8 more after that. After you finish your 16 rows, make sure that you end on the right side of your work. And going forward for the cuff, we are not going to be turning our work anymore. So keep working in rounds on this right side. So make sure you have 13 clusters, which means that we have 26 stitches. And I am going to chain 1 and into the very first stitch, which is this one here, I am going to single crochet, and then into the next stitch I am going to single crochet. So each cluster will have 2 single crochets on it or for it. So we will do 5 single crochets, and then we're gonna do 2 single crochets together, a little decrease. So that's 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now we're gonna do 2 single crochets together. Insert your hook into the first stitch, pull up the yarn, enter the hook into the next stitch, pull up the yarn. Once you have 3 loops on the hook, you go and yarn over and through all 3 of them. And then again, 1, 2, 5 regular single crochets, and then single crochet, 2 single crochets together. So insert the hook into one, pull up the yarn, insert the hook into the next stitch, pull up the yarn, 3 loops on the hook, pull through all 3 of them. To finish my sleeve, I will do the invisible join. So leave yourself about 3-4 inches of yarn and cut it. And thread it through the needle. And now there is a little V to each top of the stitches. So I am going to grab my needle and go behind the stitch, both loops, pull the yarn through. Now we're going to make the length of our stitch the same as the rest of the stitches. So I'm going to go through the back loop only and grab a stitch behind it as well. So like so. Adjust the tension so they look pretty even, the stitches. Now I put my thumb here and start weaving in my ends on the inside of the sleeve in this case. So find yarn where you can thread through the needle, making sure that it doesn't show in the front and making sure that you don't pull on the stitch that we just created. Split the yarn because it will hold the tail in place better. And that's that. Cut the excess. I'm gonna do the same at my neck finish or neckline finish off the camera. So I close the gap on one of the sleeves under the armpit. That looks pretty cool. And so now we're gonna do the same on this sleeve. All right. So we're coming from out here. So I'm going to grab this stitch here and go right through it, kind of sideways. And then go to the other side. Now this is our cluster. So I'm going to go into the first stitch of that cluster and grab this first stitch of this cluster and pull them together, not too tight, very important. And now the second stitch of that cluster with the second stitch on the opposite side. Through this single or one double crochet into the space across, and I'm happy with this. The gaps all look similar in size, so I'm going to drag my needle through this stitch into the back of my work. And now I'm going to weave in my end. So that looks pretty good. And I always make sure that I get to the same color cluster, like so, slightly below or away from the sleeve, because that's the area where a lot of pulling and tugging is happening. And then I'm gonna pick this little shell to weave in my end. So just go 3 times up and down, splitting the yarn and making sure that my needle is not going into the front of my work. And one more time. So I'm going to stop here, make sure it looks okay on the other side, which it does. And at this point, I'll just cut a little bit of the yarn because I don't need as much, and I will split the yarn. So this is a 3-ply. So I'm going to have 1 strand and then 2 strands separated. Just kind of twist this around until you get to the bottom of the yarn, like so. Then I grab a very thin crochet hook, and I will make sure that one of the strands is separated from the other strand. So for example, here. So that I can tie a knot. And I'm going to pull through. There. And now tie a few knots, and that area will be secure. Let's do 4. All that's left is we need to sew our buttons. So to do that, you will line up the pieces with the buttonhole side on top, like so. All right, so grab your buttons and make sure that your darning needle is going through the buttonholes, because you're going to have to push the needle through them, obviously. And so now for the placement, what I do is, after everything is lined up, this is where my buttonhole is, right here. So I will stick my needle at the top of the buttonhole, right there, and straight down. Then I will hold on to the needle and remove the top. Now from where I am, I need 2 stitches because we skipped 2 stitches for my buttonhole. So now my buttonhole should be or my button should be sewn here. So I am going to put a little bit of a thread in that spot so that I know okay. So that's where the button number 1 will be. And then we're going to repeat that. Line everything up. Find your next buttonhole, which is this one right here. Go to the top of the buttonhole and push down. Hold on to the needle. Make sure you're in the same row. So we are in this row, so I need to move it back for 1 right here. And then pick your 2 stitches. So I'm going to insert my crochet hook here and go down 2 stitches like so and pull my yarn through. Okay, and one more time. So grab your darning needle and let's start with the bottom. So I'm going to bring my yarn into the first marked stitch, leave myself about 2-3 inches of yarn so I can tie the button later on. And now my buttons have 2 holes, so I'm going to place the holes looking this way, up and down. So I'll remove the yarn because I know I need 2 stitches. Get my button ready, go back, and I'll grab those 2 stitches that we were talking about. So this is stitch number 1 and stitch number 2. Insert your needle and pull the yarn. Make sure that the tail is long enough for you to work with after we're done. And double check the placement. And that looks perfect. All right, so now we can cut the yarn about 2 inches. And I usually make 2 double knots. Now cut your yarn and repeat this with the other 2 buttons. So our cardigan is done. It looks lovely. And my final measurements are across chest 28 centimeters or 11 inches. The sleeve from under armpit to the end of the cuff, 7.5 inches. And the length of my cardigan from the top of the shoulder to the end of the ribbing is 12.5 inches. So this would be appropriate for 12 to 18 months old baby. I enjoyed making this tutorial with you. If you like this project, please hit like and subscribe button. And until our next project together, stay well, everyone.